Usually reconciliate in our need, and your children shall be like the stars above. The most my God be the watchman of this nation. Ambazonia, land of freedom. Usually reconciliate in our need, and your children shall be like the stars above. The most my God be the watchman of this nation.
Okay, thank you very much, Auntie Bex. I know at least we have the feeling of our nation. And as we get into this debate, let that jingle be in our mind. Let that anthem continue to inform us where we are going. Let that anthem be a tool for us to see which option we are all going to take to get us to Boya. This evening, let me welcome you all to this political education session organized by the Southern Cameroon Alliance, especially from the office of the chairman of the Alliance. As the Southern Cameroon Alliance, one of our policies is to organize political debates where we allow sons and daughters of Southern Cameroon who have experience of the revolution, experience of our history, the legal position, the diplomatic position, and who have all the knowledge to come and present to us so that as we fight our way to Boya, we see what other options are there to back up the popcorn fire. So this evening, we are going to listen to one of our own, a very special person. For me as an individual, I have just been hearing his name on different platforms, but then I have studied a few of his books, a few of his write-ups, and I must tell you, we are having a guru in the house. We are having somebody who is rooted in this revolution. We are having someone who knows the in and out, the cracks and the corners of the revolution. And I have no doubt that his presentation tonight will be an eye-opener to some of us. It will be a cradle of knowledge for some of us tonight. Now, before I go into the presentation, permit me say a few things about Mr. Edwin Ngang. Mr. Edwin Ngang, as far as I know him, and as far as I've read about him, is somebody who has been a political activist for the recognition of the Republic of Ambazonia, or today Southern Cameroons. He has not just joined this revolution from now, but he started as far back as 1983 when he fought for the harmonization of the GCA exam. Those of us here who are of age will remember that before the examination board that is there today, which again has been whitewashed by the La Republique government, there was a long struggle. And Mr. Edwin Ngang was one of those who fought as far back as 1983 for the harmonization of the GCE. He has been an activist in various political spheres, advocating for the independence of Ambazonia, both in Cameroon, Africa, and the United States as 1990. Just for this struggle, Mr. Edwin Ngang, between 1990 and 1991, was the Secretary General of the CAMFECO, the Cameroon Federalist Community. From 1991 to 1995, he was chairman of SECREMO. 1995 to 2009, he was Delegate General of the Republic of Ambazonia in the Northern America, all fighting for the recognition of fatherland, or homeland as we call it today. Mr. Edwin Ngang has been an active lobbyist for the recognition of this beloved country of ours. In America, Europe, and Africa, establishing recognition relationship within the reputable political and, of course, academic and diplomatic bodies in the world, some of which include the University of Washington Law Clinic, where he actually struggled to get a project for the recognition of Southern Cameroon. He took part in the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, an organization that has been advocating for international peace. He actually worked with them for the recognition of the state of Ambazonia. He has also worked with the Taiwan embassy, lobbying them to acknowledge the presence or to acknowledge the state or the Republic of Ambazonia. He has went as far as Liechtenstein, all in an effort to make sure that the Republic of Ambazonia is recognized. Within the Nigerian community, he has worked with the Nigerian civil society. He has also worked with the Adam Station Understanding, and he did much for Southern Cameroon to be granted audience by the late Ghanaian President John Jerry Rawlings, something that very few Southern Cameroonians knew of and even understand what happened. Mr. Edwin has not just ended there, but he has continued. From 2010, he has been behind the creation of numerous Ambazonian movements. And he is one of the very few who still live today to tell us the real truth of what's happened on the first 3 conclaves in Nigeria. He's one of those we can count on. To summarize what he has done within the Southern Cameroon struggle, Mr. Edwin Ngang was behind the foundation of STACOF, Warren, AACD, ARCC, the CARA program, the AMSORES project, and the AJET4 project. Mr. Edwin Ngang has been everywhere, fighting for the recognition of the Republic of Ambazonia. He has been with the political power, the legal power, the economic power, the diplomatic corridors, you can name it. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening, let me present to you one of our own, who is a citadel of knowledge concerning this revolution. And as you listen to his presentation, I know many of us want to know what happened in the conclaves because there are a lot of divergent stories about the conclaves. But prepare your questions. There's going to be time for question and answer. Ladies and gentlemen, may we give a hand of applause and welcome Mr. Edwin Ngang to the floor. Mr. Edwin Ngang, you're welcome to the podium.
Oh, thank you, Comrade John Arsongs, Dr. Arsongs. I am so humbled by your flattery introduction. I just consider myself a community organizer right now because that is the status that gives every opportunity for all Ambazonians, for everybody who is a citizen of the Republic of Ambazonia to feel free to engage in the change process that will most maximize their objective of restoring effective control of their independence. So I am very glad that I was invited by Comrade Becky. And today I thought that if we have to have a discussion, I believe that what they usually pose out there is the way forward. It catches everything. It makes us have a pause to understand what is currently happening and what happened in the past so that we can understand what should happen in the future. This phrase, the ways forward, perhaps may be a very important phrase for our struggle that may not really be used in the context it should be, I believe and I suspect, because it is not being posed with the right frame of mind, because mostly it's been posed by politicians, maybe as a temporal pause for them to adjust on their current strategies. So, and I use this because if we want to understand what has happened now that we don't like in our struggle, and we all agree that the struggle is probably offline, in my own opinion, I say it's orbiting in the wrong orbit. We need to understand that we really have to take some introspection on what happened in the past. We have to understand ourselves. Maybe at the psychological level, we first need to understand how we as an individual understand this problem. Do we acknowledge certain key principles? As at that level of the individual, now you understand that if you collect people with similar minds, you will now have a collective of people who can then address the problem. And this is why today I'm hoping that I can introduce you to a simple concept which which will precipitate the kind of thinking that will help us carve the way forward for our struggle without the emotions that get introduced by people who are having motivations that are not very consistent with our objective of restoring our independence. I define it in a matter of, it was conceived in about 1991. I call it the TRID principle. And it is an acronym which stands for the truth. We need to know the truth if we need to know the way forward. In other words, to know the way forward, you need to understand what currently is not happening right now and what happened in the past. We need to know the truth about those three environments of time that have affected our struggle. The next point is that we need to know our rights, which is, if you understand the truth, which may be philosophical, historical, now you need to know how do you apply this truth so that you exact processes that will be manifesting itself towards serving your interest, and also understand the concept of self-interest. Those rights are not something that's supposed to be debated on. Some of them are inherited, some of them are natural laws. Those are the things that Ambazonian needs to get familiar with about understanding their problem. After you understand that, you know that if you collate the truth of your history and the rights that are associated with those historical truths, and from your history to our contemporary moment of today, you will understand why you have a sense, why you need to inculcate a certain sense of survival, which is now only seen among human species, inanimate and non-animate species. Survival is defined through identity. So we need to then have a sense of identity in this sub-region. So we have to understand the truth, our rights and identity. That is what constitutes the TRID principles. And I started understanding that we have a serious problem in this sub-region where we find ourselves in. Unfortunate to us, so we're born in it. Most of us were born in it. I was born right when they were having those nonsense in 1960. So I couldn't help it. There are others who were born just 20 years ago. But our parents had an unfortunate circumstance where they did not address the properties of survival as they were supposed to in their time and in that place. It could be a function of being not educated, which is usually true, or it could also be a function of their tendencies, which I later learned. We have this proclivity to politicize anything. So, and then I started wondering, why were our parents so prone to not seeing the truth, which was glaring at them? And one object of the truth is associated with our rights. It's an article in United Nations Article 76B. Everybody should have that article. I think every Ambazonian should just abandon everything and be singing that article, be referencing the article, because it is an article that supersedes everything. The United Nations Article 76B guaranteed us, or the other word is entitled us to independence through a process, through an evolutionary process. The termination of that evolutionary process from a state of dependency to self-government was independence. And if we had only referenced that Article 76B and not connected anything, not be associated with the intrigues of Nigerian politics, like when you hear about they call it the 1955, they call it a benign neutrality event. You know, of course, it allowed them, it was a prelude to them being given a regional government. But you wonder, why were they even bothering themselves about it? These guys, you were never supposed to have been governed through Nigeria. It was United Kingdom, a trick of denying us a sense of our entitlement over the evolution of time from 1946, when the United Nations system came through that process. so that we didn't understand that we were entitled. All that mattered for this trust territory was that we sat and did nothing. Can you imagine? Had our politicians not been involved in anything, not participated in the Nigerian political system, not be involved in creating political parties, unfortunately, those political parties were all involved in promoting someone else's agenda. And why do I say that? If you notice, all our political parties had a K associated with it. KUNC, 1952. Cameroon United National Congress. Who was the head of that party? It wasn't an Ambazonian. It was a Francophone immigrant, R.J. Dibonge, and his crony support Priso and the rest of them who had immigrated and found lucrative jobs in our territory. They were the one, obviously, more savvy. I will give them everything, you know, they served their best interests. So they created that party. It wasn't for anything else but for unifying the UPC elements that have fled the forced labor that was being imposed by the Francophonie, the oppressive Francophonie system in their country. And they came to our country, which was a free country, and we had took them in. Instead of them working towards serving our interests. Of course, I wouldn't expect that because our political culture was not even helping ourselves. We were not aware of our own interests in United Nations Article 76B. So they created that party and boom, Foncha and Endere and the rest of everybody joined and became part of that party. But it was to unify that country. And you understand, why was there any need for unifying a country which for the past, you call it since 1914, has been under acculturation process, under harmonization process, under integration process by an Anglo-Saxon subsystem, main system. Why are we going to force that system, which has no relationship with a Francophonie system? It has never been experimented anywhere in the world. And if you pause here and wonder why were England and France not advocating for our interests during the decolonization process, that's when you often get it more. You then have to appreciate the concept of self-interest, which is associated with knowledge of the TRID principle, knowledge of the truth, knowledge of your rights, and the understanding of your unique identity as a tool to survival in any subsystem or in any environment you live in. And we in that Amazonian territory did not have anybody advocating for our interests. Then in the 1950s until today. So you will notice in my conversation, I would like to be swinging back from the past to the current. I will ask this question: has there been any event in our contemporary time where we are now, where we are complaining about the way forward, where we have conclaved to examine why we are what we are today? I don't think so. My cultural research indicates that we've never really had this tendency for meeting to examine the problems that we encounter in that region. We always meet with a preconceived notion that we have a solution in place. And that is why when people come to those meetings, they don't usually come there motivated by the idea of examining why we are now a recolonized people in Cameroon. Our status is basically a colonized people. We are not only being colonized, we are being forcibly integrated. This is now should be considered crime against humanity to forcibly assimilate somebody tantamount to crime against humanity. We should invoke R2P. But how can we get into that thought processes when it is ourselves, our politicians, all throughout the history, who have not been doing their due diligence to examine this problem on behalf of the people? Why? I mean, at every stage you will see opportunities will come. And I think if I have to go back in history, I'll look at 2 points in history. In 1959, when they were preparing to, quote unquote, terminate trusteeship. Remember, all our parties were all promoting reunification of this trusteeship, which the United Kingdom had been managing from 19 let me go back from 1914, the mandatory system, till 1960. Let's not get too mad against the United Kingdom. Just imagine you've been managing a people, hoping they will adopt your values, only for you to wake up one morning, these people are clamoring to go join a totally alien culture that they themselves have never contemplated merging with. The United Kingdom has never had any discussion with France to collaborate on anything. Maybe it's only in NATO now that you see them working together. Throughout their history, they've been having a contentious relationship. But that has happened to us because of our leadership not understanding those values that were inherent in our history. And it is still not late. Why 1959 conference at Manfi, I think the date was August, I think the population was at 100 or something delegates attended the Manfi conference of 1959, August 12. The purpose was to happen through the proposal of a plebiscite. Interesting. The Foncha Endele competition was still live right in the halls of that conference. They had just come back from London, where they could not even have a consensus when asked, when do you want termination of trusteeship to happen? They were not sure. Foncha was deferring it. Remember that Foncha was already the head of state of a whole territory. He was elected prime minister in around the end of January 1959. He had a full legislative body made of the House of Chiefs and an elected assembly. And I would believe that he had all the complements of a country. He should have just told the United Kingdom that your role as mandated by Article 760 has expired. I am the head of state of the country that is called Republic of Southern Cameroon. Now, if you pause and ask, why is it that psychology was not part of our political culture, you will know that it's because of our nature of not advocating sovereignty politics. And this can only be attributed to lack of knowledge and to the manipulation by forces from the environment that we unfortunately happen to be located, meaning those Francophones who were all manipulating us remotely. All the political parties in Southern Cameroon were financed by UPC, by Union Popular de Cameroons. All. Foncha was recruited. The story about Foncha is this: he was drafted. They sought him out because of his lineage, got him and inaugurated him in a conference overnight in Kumba in 1952 to start cultivating a new party that was eventually named KNDP, Cameroon United Democratic Party. And why are we unaware of this? And why do we need to know this, the truth, which is part of our history? It's because why were the UPC interested in getting Foncha to head a party, and why were all the parties, Cameroon United Congress, KUPP, KPP, and KUNC, all of them were K, and OK, finally in 1959, Cameroon, Cameroon party. It was because these guys had an interest in promoting a greater united Cameroon, and saw us, who are unable to associate ourselves with our own values, exploitable, and they did it. I will give them the fact that they did that. If we want to make a correction, we need to go back to this history where the truth resides, of course. And in that very process, we will understand that if at the Manque conference, the chiefs who were uneducated, 68% of them promoted the idea that, and they were using the wrong term, secession from Nigeria. We never were part of Nigeria, so you shouldn't have used secession, but I'll give it, let's say secession from Nigeria should equate independence for the trusteeship of Southern Cameroon. That was the resolution that was adopted at the Manfred conference in August 1959. And of course, you would think that the majority won. Those who wanted to join with Nigeria, like Endele, could not get the majority. Foncha who wanted, Foncha hesitated back and forth. At one time, he just said he wanted to separate from Nigeria, and that thing gives him some time to think about it before he joins Cameroon. So, but at the end of the day, he was so indecisive that they had to impose on us a point of view which was not the view adopted at the Mafe conference. So you ask yourself, why did this function and who represented us at the fourth committee later in October in 1959, why did they not just present the people's position, best interest? Why did they not represent the people's will? You will have it hard pressed to find out why. The only way you can understand why was because if you understand the psychology motivating these two individuals who were leaders in those days. On the one hand, they had no sense, both of them had no sense of associating our political culture with our entitlement rights, which is a problem we still face today. So we cannot be blaming them if we haven't corrected that problem. Okay, you have people who've joined our struggle at various times in the course of our history. They are free to join in even as of tomorrow. But you have an obligation, especially if you cross that thin red line, I call it thin red line, to be considered a politician or an activist or a talking head, to at the minimum serve the best interest of your people, because that is the role of the elites of any society. If the people of Ambazonia did it right in 1959, guess what happened in 1961? The politicians did the worst thing. They abandoned the agreement that had been achieved successfully, negotiated by two sovereign countries, because our relationship with Cameroon must be considered in the real context of it. There should not be any emotion attached to our relationship with Cameroon. The hour is this indigenous English-speaking people. How did you come to be associated with an indigenous French-speaking people? It's a question that if any Ambazonian politician can answer, then they don't deserve to be hanging around. The